Good afternoon again. Here we are. We are going to start the last session that is about Dragonfly mental health. I'm going to present now the moderator of this session, that it's Ana Petronilho. And I hope you all enjoy.
Okay, sorry. All right. Hi, so good afternoon, everybody. It is my great pleasure to introduce the session on mental health, which is obviously very important, even more so nowadays. So our speaker is Olga Vedenskaya, and Olga studied medicine, specializing in medical biophysics. And she did her MD studies on traumatic brain injury and mass spectrometry. She then further did her PhD in Germany, in Berlin, where she worked in multi-omics approach to research and of liver cancer and precancerous conditions. She continued her work in translational medicine and mass spectrometry in Dresden, working as a postdoc at Max Planck. And in addition to her work, she's devoted her spare time to mental health issues. So we will be delighted to hear our talk on mental health aspects during the pandemic. Thank you very much, Olga. The Zoom is yours.
Olga, you're muted. Sorry.
Does it work now?
Yeah, it's working now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And you see my presentation, right?
We do see it, yes.
Okay, so thank you so much. And it's a pleasure for me to be here. And I'm very, very happy that many institutions now take care and acknowledge the mental health issues, and especially during isolation. So with this, I'd like to start my presentation. Somehow it's not clicking. First of all, what's different now compared to pre-pandemic measures, pre-pandemic times, sorry. So first of all, it's the lack of physical contact with other family members, with friends, and with colleagues. Then a lot of us have to work from home on and off. Some of us unfortunately face temporary unemployment, and especially it's difficult for PhD student is the stop of wet lab research activities due to anti-pandemic isolation measures. In general, PhD time is the time when you're uncertain about your future, but now during the pandemic times, it's even worse. So we're not sure what's going to happen with us financially, health-wise, travels-wise, and other plans. Some of us have to homeschool children, and of course, especially if you have to combine it with the research of full-time, it's very, very challenging. And the question is, what kind of impact do these all changes have on mental health? So there are some people who claim that they're better off, and there are some people who claim that they're worse off, but the majority, probably the vast majority, especially in academia, are saying that things are worse for them mentally, mental health wise. There have been a couple of studies, mostly, and today I'm going to talk about the studies devoted and based on the first wave. And the data from the second wave is still being analyzed. So there's been a lot of studies, and across 13 identified studies, it's been proven that there is a negative psychosociological outcomes, including depressive symptoms, anxiety, anger, stress, and other problems. And it is now obvious that quarantine measures during serious coronavirus outbreaks have extensive negative consequences for mental health. I would like to talk maybe for 2 minutes about this University College London study. The study was formed in the way that every participant answered a weekly bunch of questions. So the reviewers, the authors, could see how the anti-pandemic measures, and in particular isolation measures, effect on the mental health. So here you see the mental health and depression starting from it's in UK, starting from the lockdown, and then easing the lockdown measures and so on. So from the 21st of March to the 22nd of August, every week the things are measured. And here I would really like to draw the attention of PIs, of postdocs, of senior postdocs, and of people who are responsible for the PhD students. Here we see that the most affected age group is 18 to 29 years old. So basically, these are our PhD students. These are the people who are the most affected by the isolation measures, and they're showing the most amount of depression count compared to other age groups. And unfortunately, the same goes to anxiety. So here again, our PhD students age group is the most affected by the anxiety. And here we see that there are some stressors, of course, such as COVID, and people are scared of unemployment. Initially, people are getting scared of even if they're going to get food or not, and the finances, but things are sort of stabilizing. And we also have to admit that life satisfaction slowly grew by the end of the first wave. And now we expect that, again, due to the COVID and the current prolongation of anti-pandemic measures all the time, we expect that life satisfaction drops again. What I would like to focus now on is to underline what is happening to our body and mind during the isolation measures and pandemic in general. In my opinion, this is really, really essential to understand that it's happening to you, that it's happening, it's normal, it's biology, and understanding your response would mean that you can actually somehow work on your body and mind response in order to feel more stable. So it's important, and we always underline it in all of our talks, that mental health is not different from physical health. And there are, of course, triggers affecting the mental state as there are triggers affecting physical health. And again, understanding your anxiety response is essential. And managing these anxiety response stimuli that makes us anxious is essential. So most likely all of you know that there are parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems we have, and parasympathetic system is responsible for the calm state, the resting state, and sympathetic is responsible for our anxiety response, for our stress response. So basically our sympathetic system is used to the responses which are basically essentially boils down to fight or flight. So in the wild nature, you are seeing the predator, you're seeing a tiger, so you need to either fight the tiger or flight from the tiger. So this is what your sympathetic system is responsible for. And in case of acute stress, things are pretty clear. So you see the predator, the response is known for your body and for your mind, and the response is basically do something right now. And then sympathetic system gets switched on for a very short time. Then the stress is gone. So you're basically either fighting and done fighting, or you're flying. And then stress is gone after a short period of time. And this is the end of sympathetic system sort of like switch on. And in case of chronic stress, what happens is that during the COVID-19 outbreak, the stress is there all the time. COVID is there all the time. There is no COVID-free zone, sort of, at least in our case. So yes, we can imaginary speak about Australia and New Zealand response, but currently we're not there, or most of us are not there. So in the situation where we are at the moment, we cannot fight COVID, we cannot flight from COVID, but our body and our mind is constantly telling us that you should do something. All the time, your body is telling you and your mind is telling you, I should do something, I should do something. And your sympathetic system is on chronically. And that's why we all feel anxious and agitated permanently. And this is critical to manage the system. This is possible. You need to train yourself on how to do it. And then it will make you, it will help you to feel more stable. So what to do? Or better yet, what are the symptoms? So first of all, when chronic stress is on, our sleep is disturbed, which creates this nasty feedback cycle of I cannot sleep because I cannot handle the anxiety, and then anxiety still grows because you cannot sleep, and then it kind of this is vicious circle out of which you cannot get out. Also, emotional control is impaired during the pandemic time. We all experience the loss of structure. It's also hard to say now. Some people adjusted better because it's been almost a year. Some people adjusted worse, but it is, especially initially, all of us felt like the loss of structure was there. And also the rumination. Rumination is a constant chewing of a particular thought in your brain, and you're constantly going through this thought over and over again, and you cannot switch off this mechanism. And a lot of people during their anxiety and stress periods, they complain about it, and they would like to do what to do with this. So first, what to do with the nasty feedback cycle. First, and I think the most important is that you need to acknowledge that these feelings which you have are reasonable. There have been multiple suggestions to try to practice guided relaxation, which helps you to switch the parasympathetic response on from the sympathetic response. So here, I always like to tell this. So I'm coming from the former Soviet Union settings. So there was never such things as mindfulness when I was growing up. Relaxation, especially guided relaxation, all these things were never discussed and sort of not existing in my environment. So when I was first thinking of what can I do to help myself to go through the stress even before the COVID, so I've came across the guided relaxation practices, and I was completely skeptical. I was like, come on, this cannot just work 10 minutes a day and you'll feel better. This cannot work. But in fact, it does. I tried it and it does really work. So there are many, many resources online, more spiritual, less spiritual. And I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend to all of you, please take care and try, like, I don't know, for 2-3 days, you'll see the difference. At least in my case, it was really nice. We used some breathing techniques in my institute. We had a yoga teacher, and we did just breathing gymnastics for 15 minutes, 3 times a week, and it did really help. Now, emotional control. So since you're told fight or flight, your body is telling you that you need to do something. Usually people who are closest to you suffer the most from it. So if you need to fight, your body is telling you, oh, I need to fight. So people who are close to you, your partner, spouses, children, close friends, they're suffering the most from your flight or fight system. I think what is really essential is to tell yourself that you are doing something. And when you feel like, oh, I need to do something about this, you actually should tell yourself that you are doing something. By following the anti-pandemic isolation measures, you are helping people. You are helping the doctors who are at the front line. You're helping the senior citizens. And this is the best thing we can do at the moment to help our society, is to follow anti-pandemic isolation measures. Of course, if it is possible, you can try to double the time you enjoy with your partner, movies, video games, cooking. Unfortunately, a lot of relationships did not survive the first wave, and the loneliness numbers are spiraling at the moment. For this, there are multiple options, which I'll tell you later, on what you could do to feel non-isolated, even though if you live alone. The loss of structure. It's important to create new structures. We'll talk about it later in 1 or 2 minutes. And rumination. So with rumination, it's also very interesting because I was also pretty skeptical when I was going through the mental health first aider training. Our trainer told us that if you continuously ruminating about something, your brain only can ruminate about one thing. So you could actively try to switch the rumination subject using distractors. For example, if you're constantly sitting in the front of your laptop and thinking, My paper will be rejected, my paper will be rejected, my paper will be rejected, I'll leave under the bridge, and so on and so forth. What you can see, and it did help me, and I strongly encourage you to try it, is getting some nice peaceful picture and in your mind starting to describe it. So for example, I see one pink flower, I see two red flowers, I see poppy seed flowers, I see daffodils, I see other flowers, and so on and so forth. Literally describing to yourself a picture. It will help your brain to switch from the rumination subject to something which is not a rumination subject. Of course, you need to train it. Of course, it will not work right away brilliantly, but after a certain amount of training, this should help. So basically, your aim, as I already mentioned, is manage your environment and minimize anxiety triggers and maximize anti-anxiety experiences. This is what I would like to show. This is an interesting picture, which unfortunately is not really relevant to us, in my opinion. So basically, we see here the red line is cases with mental. So here is this line is daily number of deaths during the outbreak, and we see that these are one second. So these are the cases of mental health issues, right? So they're spiraling up, and without any measurements devoted to mental health, the cases of mental health issue are growing, such as fear, anxiety. This is like acute OCDs and panic attacks. So when the number of deaths are stabilizing, plateauing, or going down, we see the post-pandemic mental disorders such as PTSD, depression, suicide thoughts, and of course, grief for the loss of loved ones. Plus, of course, it can overlap and sort of like lie on top of the existing disorders. And yeah, this is a difficult time. So unfortunately, in my opinion, we are somewhere in the post-pandemic mental health disorders at the moment because of the second wave. And we don't know how long time it will be continuing, how much time and how much effort, how many efforts it will take us to get over it. So we really need to start taking of our mental health right now if we haven't done it before. And this in case of when the capacity of mental health care system is good enough. And I can imagine that in Portugal, this thing should be taken care of, like in EU countries, things are not as bad. And so it's possible to lower down this curve and lower down. Of course, we can never eliminate it, but we can manage the post-pandemic mental disorders and sort of like cases with the sort of mental health issues due to mitigation efforts. So I would strongly recommend you to take these efforts and other ones, which I'll talk about later, rather seriously. Creating new schedule and other things which we've talked about, we believe it's important because basically what happened is that not only our daily routine has been changed, but also our work environment has changed. Our communication with our peers, with our bosses, everything has changed now. So first of all, it's important, in my opinion, to reset the goals and redefine success in general. So the aims which you were 3 years ago put in front of yourself when you started your PhD can really change now due to pandemic and interference. So we need to think what are our actual goals at the moment. So while 3 years ago you were thinking, okay, I need to finish in 3 years, now you can say, okay, pandemic hit on, maybe I can get an extension and have myself extra 2 years, and that would be my goal. So you need to see how your goals change through this year to see maybe you can adjust yourself and give yourself a break at a certain point. Then, which is also not super intuitive, but has been proven, is that focusing on your mental health will actually lead to an increase of productivity. And you guilt tripping yourself is not going to be helpful for your productivity, for your mental health, and in general for your project, for example. Work-wise, you could try to redefine the goals with your supervisor according to a new schedule. So your supervisor, there is a high chance they're going through the same. Of course, we understand, and we actually wrote a publication on it. It should be released in a couple of days. That while we all are in pandemic, and of course senior researchers, of course they have issues. The thing is that for PhD students, the support system, their safe net, is not that well yet established. So PhD students are not that yet financially secure. They don't, most of them, really have families to rely on. They don't have children to keep the routine up. So our PhD students are really at the vulnerable position. So, and for the PhD students, of course, everyone should understand that what you're going through is just horrible. But your supervisor can be also going through something horrible. But what is recommended in this case is to actually sit with your supervisor and say, hey, you know, like, the goals which we were having in the beginning of the year are obviously non-reachable now because we were sitting for half a year at home and I didn't have an access to the lab. So maybe we could reconsider our goals and recreate and create a new schedule. And yeah, with reasonable people, this usually works. Another thing which we all deal with is distractibility while working from home. And of course, this is also very normal. And you should also try to talk to yourself and tell yourself that things will not be the same they were when you were working from the lab. They were not this way. They are not the way they used to be before the pandemic. And of course, as we already talked, we are all prone to have rumination, which is helpful to switch the rumination subject with using distractors. For some people, the Pomodoro technique helps when you set yourself a timer and you like set yourself short periods of being active and then having some breaks, I don't know, 15 minutes or something. In my opinion, that only increases the anxiety. Especially for people who are prone to have anxiety. So for example, I cannot use the Pomodoro technique, but for some people it helps. So maybe you can read a bit about it. What is also recommended is to manage your news and social media consumption. Again, it's rather difficult. I think most of us were really prone to watch all this corona news during the first wave. And now our brain is sort of adjusted to all these horrible numbers and we're not really surprised anymore. But it's still reasonable to budget your news consumption and think about whether you should like limit it or not. It's also recommended not to watch the news within 2 hours before going to sleep, or consider using a palate cleanser just after watching the news. For example, and this is my favorite example, I love watching Mike and Molly TV show. It's very nice, very soothing for me particularly. So I just watch it before I go to bed. I watch this episode 50 times and it makes me feel calmer and it makes me feel more secure when I go to bed. So I just use this sort of like palate cleanser for my brain after the stressful time. Also, it's important, but I think we all know that treat news with mindfulness and acknowledge the resources you get and acknowledge the anxious and stress you get from the news. So you have to be really careful about the sources of the news you consume. Intentionally building a new schedule or structure. I am nearly positive that most of you have already established the new structures by working from home, but I think it's still worth talking about it. So it is recommended to wake up at a specific time and also go to bed at a specific time when it's possible. And I don't think we should guilt trip ourselves for not managing it once in a while. It's also recommended, obviously, to eat your meals at the same time and try to eat healthy food. All these kind of things we all know. What did help me is to schedule the day, and I'm using the day planner, and it does really help me to like see what things are coming in the tomorrow or 2 days in the next couple of days, and like unblock sort of the weekday, so weekends from weekdays, in order to be able to see that this is actually now a weekend. And what also is recommended, and I strongly believe that is helpful, is to have this morning works or morning walks or like lunch walks or evening walks before work. So if you go for coffee or take coffee to go from home and go to the park, it will help you to like for your brain to reset from the sleeping and the bad mode to working mode. You could try to see this time when you spend with the family as a quality time, but I also think that people with the kids, they were shown to adjust in the better way because they have to take care of the kids who really need the daily schedule. So it's recommended, of course, to try to find something which you enjoy doing together. For example, sports, comedy, karaoke has been shown that it's really like boosting the spirit. And of course, all these activities such as homeschooling your child and other things are also helpful for the kids. In the moment strategy for dealing with overwhelm while alone. So this is a very difficult question, and there's been a lot of reports on that. We all, or most of us, live alone or in WG, but WG is a German term for shared apartment. And sometimes it's you just feel lonely. And you can call friends or relatives or try to go outside, use some mindfulness techniques, guided relaxation and other things. But what I would recommend you, and these things are really blooming, is to try to find the community. It can be both scientific and non-scientific. A lot of people are struggling with the same situation, unfortunately, and the things have been difficult for everyone. So the physical isolation should not be equal to social isolation. In Dragonfly, for example, we have 3 hours per week in our community where everyone is just welcome to join and talk about their issues. It's of course based on for academics by academics. So mostly we're talking about the issues from the academic life, but on the other hand, it's also a nice place to talk about non-scientific issues and find some new community. You could schedule the calls with your family and friends and really like have it stable. Okay, every Tuesday we're meeting at 2 p.m., which I think is really, really helpful because again, it will give you some things to look forward to. It's really, really important that when you cannot help though, you should be able to ask for help. And it is difficult. And I do acknowledge it's extremely difficult sometimes to ask for help. And especially if we're talking about the grief, about the loss of the loved ones due to COVID or some other issues. But there are ways and there are options. So Margarita helped me to find some clinics. So here we see some clinics, Clinica da Mente, something which I cannot read also, and Alter Status clinics. They are there to help you. And if you cannot deal with things by yourself, so I strongly recommend to go to the clinic. And also Nova University has some mental health support services for students, so please have a look at it. Virtual communications with colleagues, mentors, mentees, and coworkers. Actually, a lot of people, not only students, but also lecturers and teachers have been complaining that the less direct contact with students and the things which was possible at a certain point was faculty, for faculty can take care of it by having meetings outside. It's not possible in Germany now. To my knowledge, it's not possible in Portugal at the moment, but if at a certain point and when at a certain point it is possible, I would strongly recommend, especially because it should be a nice weather sometimes later. Then other work-related things which you could do, and we've practiced it in my lab, is informal coffee breaks. So we all work from home, we all sit next to our laptops, and it's nice just twice a week or once a week to get together at 3 p.m. and just talk to your lab mates once in a while. Journal clubs is something which is ambivalent. I love journal clubs. My journal clubs are awesome, but in general, people are struggling to find motivation to read papers. So if you are to have journal clubs, don't have them more often than once in 2 weeks. And then things are better taken than having journal clubs once a week, and then it's all like not really nice. I would suggest you to schedule regular online talks with your mentors and mentees when needed. So for example, in my case, I talk to my mentees every Monday in the evening, just independent on whether they've been successful with things which we planned together or not. We just sit and talk, and if they didn't do anything, we still spend 1 hour talking, and I'm asking them, how can I help them? Other way to socialize with some scientists, as I already mentioned, that we have this 3 hours devoted to Dragonfly Cafe. And I would also recommend you to check online for key opinion leaders in your field. So in most of the fields, there are free lectures and seminars online organized by key opinion leaders. So this is the time to network. And for example, with the Dragonfly, most of the friends whom I met there, most of my colleagues in the Dragonfly, I've never met in real life. We got together almost right before the COVID outbreak, so didn't have a chance to meet, and this is how it is. And still, they're wonderful friends of mine. We're working together, we're spending time together. So it doesn't. So the format, the online format, is not worse of a quality. It's just different, and we all have to acknowledge that and take the best out of we can. I also strongly recommend you to become a mentor, because it gives you a sense and a feeling of achievement. There are nowadays many mentorship programs, for example, PhD students are mentoring master students are mentoring bachelor students. It is helpful, especially in case of younger people, when they don't know what to do and when they don't know how to apply for certain PhD positions or something. You can help them, and in my opinion, this is a very, very rewarding activity. So basically, overall, I'd like to say that there are ways to deal with the isolation impact during pandemic, but for this, you need to reset the goals and redefine the success measures. You need to deal with the distractibility while working from home, and you intentionally should build a new structure and schedule of your day in life. You really need to develop some strategies of dealing with the overwhelm while alone. This is essential in my opinion, and establish virtual communication with colleagues. And by establishing such a routine for yourself, things during the pandemic will be or should be taken sort of easier. A couple of things, parenting and isolation. From the parents of Dragonfly, I do not have children myself, so it's very difficult for me to make some judgment. But overall, what I've collected from our volunteers is that people just need to, at least that's what they said, that things, that people with kids will have to accept at a certain point that during the pandemic, they will feel less relaxed than people without kids. And that probably you will not be able to do as much as you've done before, and accepting this will help you to be selective of what you do with your work and free time. And if both parents' work hours are overlapping, sometimes they choose of whose work is more critical and so on and so forth. Then there are some people having shifts before and after lunch. And in case of a single parenthood, it's suggested to cooperate with other parents to have shifts, especially in case of when the kindergarten are closed. Getting back to work is something, I'm not sure how the exact situation is in Lisbon, but in general, and I did find it for myself as well at the end of the first wave, that it was difficult for me to get back to work. So indeed, we tried to agree on particular shifts. So, okay, I was not going to work for 3 months. I cannot just spend 5 days there. So, okay, then I'll spend 2 days at work, 3 days at home, and like increasing the amount of hours gradually when possible was really helpful. Speaking to your manager or boss or HR person actually whom you trust about this if you feel it's right, this is something reasonable. Another thing you have to keep in mind is that if you have or have had longer term mental health problems, you can be entitled to some adjustments. So you need to talk to your family doctors about this, and they can suggest you some solutions for this. So maybe if you haven't disclosed your issues before, maybe this is the safe time to do it now, because now overall awareness about mental health issues, especially in the academic field, is raising. So some people may feel safer in the current environment to speak more openly about their issues. And again, getting the professional help, I repeat this, and I would really, really like for all of you to focus here, because it may save somebody's life at a certain point. So talk to your family doctor if the things are not urgent, or you can try to find a therapist on your own. So if you are an immigrant, so for local people, it's usually easier to find therapists, but if you're an immigrant and you do not speak local language, you can ask your community. You can ask your employer, you can ask your university manager, or you can Google trying to find something. I'm pretty sure that in EU, with the health insurance, you're entitled for several free of charge hours for psychotherapy. So then you can make an appointment, and then you can decide. You just have to talk about this coverage issues before you make an appointment or during the first appointment, and things can get solved. Alternative, which has been again blooming during the pandemic, is then online sessions with a therapist from your own country. You'll have to pay by yourself. Usually it's cheaper than in EU, or at least, for example, Russian therapy in Russia is cheaper than Russian-speaking therapy. It's therapy in Germany. So you'll have to pay, but typically, and access to this resource can be easier compared to waiting lists for a couple of months in the country of residence. Please keep in mind that you can always go to emergency room, even if you don't speak the local language. In case of some suicidal thoughts, in case of some self-harm thoughts, you can always, and you should go to ER, and people will be able to help you. They'll, in some larger clinics, they'll provide you with a translator, or you'll be able to get some help. Please don't let this language barrier prevent you from getting help. And again, these are the clinics which are there in the in Lisbon. Also, Nova University again suggests some mental health support. Yeah, so this is really, really important, and you don't have to write it down. I'll send you the PPTX or the PDF of this, so you can just get the links from the PDF. More information online. There are multiple ways, so you can get on Coursera. There's a wonderful online course on managing your mental health during COVID. A lot of information I got from there. There's a resource at mentalhealth.org.uk. There are a lot of resources for a particular targeted group. For example, for young adults, for parents, for singles, for people with partners. So they really have a lot of resources there. There's a podcast series on COVID-19 and mental health. There are a bunch of talks about and presentations and texts about parenting. Also, I would suggest, and I think it's really important and beneficial overall, not during the COVID times, but in general, is the mental health first aider course. There's one which is really nice on Coursera. There's another one, Johns Hopkins University. So there are multiple resources where you can find some ways not to only help yourself, but also help others. Yeah, okay, so with this, I'd like to finish my talk, and I'll be very happy to answer questions if you have any, or we can just have a discussion.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, so I would like to highlight something for the discussion now, and for the questions. Feel free to send some of the questions in the chat, or even to speak out. But you can direct, if there's a private question, you can direct them to Olga specifically in the chat. No, because you can send it directly without anyone seeing what the question is. Okay, so I can't see the raised hands here. Maybe I have to do something else.
I don't think there's any raised hand.
Okay, so perhaps I should start with the question, by the way.
Okay. There are questions.
You have two.
Okay, sorry, I can't see them.
The first one was by Diana Loza. So if you can talk with Diana.
Hello, Olga. Thank you very much for the talk. I have a comment question more regarding to one of the things that you said, which I think is important about redefining goals and success by PhD students. Sometimes I think the problem is that they are not only defined by the students themselves or even the supervisors, because the pressure, the external pressure, for example, for funding and so on, really creates a pressure that you cannot get out from. And it's, I mean, even if you try to think, okay, I will not publish so much, okay, I will not write so many projects, in the end, this can mean the end for you. I mean, maybe not for PhDs, but at least for supervisors. For example, our funding agency, they are really, let's say, they don't really care about all these problems. And even though people are asking them to delay the deadlines and so on, they are a bit insensitive to this. How do you have any advice on how to deal with this?
I wish I have a simple solution. Unfortunately, I don't think anyone can give you a simple solution. The problem here is that, again, PhD students are in the most vulnerable position because they depend on one PI. And for a lot of people, this is also a visa issue, funding issue, 3 years contract, and that's it. I don't have an easy answer on that. We really try to talk to the faculty members so they would readjust their demands on the PhD students. So I think in this case, I would probably recommend you, if it's possible, to go through PhD.net, PhD representatives. So they should, so at least what we did with our PhD students and postdoc during the COVID outbreak in our institute, we sat with the representatives and said, guys, the situation is horrible. No one will be able to finish in 3 years. That's it. The institute was closed for 8 months, for example, yeah? So then they, the PhD reps collected all the information, and then they went to the faculty and said, hey guys, we need an extension. We need an extension for a year for each PhD student who needs it. Things worked, and people who asked for the prolongation actually got it. But for this, you need a unified and united approach.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so in this case, again, you need to talk to your grad school folks, so your grad school coordinators, your PhD representative. So if you go as a united front, this is possible. Also, we actually, if needed, we advocate for people. So if needed, you can drop us an email and say, hey guys, can you actually, so we couldn't manage to convince our faculty, can you please try to talk for us?
Yeah, because I think the problem comes from the top, not even from the faculty. It comes from the very top, and that's the problem here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, systemic issue in academia.
Systemic.
We can talk about it forever,
Yeah.
but the thing is that how we can particularly help our PhD students now. We have a special like task force in Dragonfly about systemic change. There's a whole separate topic. It will not be changed overnight, but systemic issues is something which PhD student who has the contract ended in 2 months, they don't care about systemic change. They need help right now.
Yeah.
So this is what we're trying to bring up and say, okay, talk to your coordinators, talk to your PhD representative, talk to all the people who can talk to the faculty or people who are hiring to the directors. So they would get, so you would get heard. And again, if you need help, then we can try to advocate for you. Just drop us an email.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I don't have an easy solution for that.
Yeah, it was more a comment. Thank you.
There is a raised hand for Raquel Salião.
Hi, Olga. I'm not a PhD student. I'm a principal investigator. It's not really a question, but it's also a comment for you and for the audience. First, I'd like to really thank you for your talk. I think the topic you addressed is really important. I don't know who had the idea of inviting you, but I think it's crucially important that we discuss these things. And yeah, unfortunately, in Portugal, actually, in the past few days, there's lots of articles in the newspaper and in the media talking about mental health, but this is very recent. And in general, there is some prejudice about talking about mental health in general in Portugal, I guess, not in other countries, but here it's like you are crazy if you need help or if you want to discuss these things in a more normal way. So I really would like to emphasize that what we are going through is totally not normal. And what you said about people speaking up and talking to your supervisors or talking to whoever you need, I think it's really important. And the message that it is normal, that you don't feel normal, it's very important. Regarding what Diana was saying, which is about all these deadlines that we have now in Portugal for postdocs or for PhD students or for even for PIs applying for grants, it's really rather unfortunate that our funding agencies are not caring about ourselves. There's already data. One of our colleagues just shared with me some data from Canada who showed that in the first lockdown, researchers were very affected, particularly women researchers, not being able to submit grants and quality grants. And when compared to male researchers. So I think this is unfortunate, and now we have over 120 participants. We discussed this briefly last week, I guess, but our funding agency says it's not going to change the deadlines. I still think that even they say that, we can continue sending them emails and letters asking for that. And so if
going public would help,
yes,
going on Twitter, unfortunately, yes. Sometimes this is the way, going to mass media and saying, guys, come on. We have to stand up by ourselves because no one else will.
Yes, but so my urge is for those who are still, that are with us, and if you feel that things should change, please do your part.
I agree. Thank you so much. I wanted to talk about this stigma, which you brought up a little bit. We've actually made a little bit of research on that, and we figured out that one of the ways to fight stigma locally in campuses, for example, is to collaborate with faculty. So when we interview faculty and we make the movie about it, 20 minutes movie, 10 minutes movie, when the faculty of the known campus, so for the people in the campus, are openly saying, I've been depressed for the last 2.5 years and it's been difficult, I've been taking medication, I've been going to the therapy and so on and so forth. So when the faculty is open about it, usually things are getting sort of easing. But in this case, of course, we need a collaboration from the faculty point of view, because PhDs, and there are many of grassroots initiatives, but as long as there's no systemic approach, this is going to be very, very difficult. If you don't mind, I've got a question here, and it's really, really nice question in my opinion. Do you have tips for when you don't feel like doing anything at all? I do not have tips, but my therapist says that I shouldn't. If I don't feel like I should, if I feel like I shouldn't do anything, I just don't. Again, I'm in the luxury of having a postdoc position at the moment. I'm not a PhD student, but I would say that constant overcoming of your own so-called laziness, which is of course not laziness, this is a tiredness, this is a burnout. This can be a symptom of depression. If you don't feel like doing anything for months or for a couple of weeks, there can be a sign of depression. My suggestion is not actually doing anything. And if you feel like you need medical help on that, just go and get the help for that. Forcing yourself, constantly forcing yourself is never a good thing. It will lead to burnout. Your brain and your body will eventually give up. And this is extremely difficult, but this is my suggestion. I'm not a practicing medical doctor at the moment. This is the way I choose for myself. Everyone have to decide on their own, I guess. I don't know. I hope this answers. I just think that we all at the moment should give ourselves a break and a pat on the shoulder saying, you know, you actually made it so far till now. So just give yourself a break. There is a question from Jose Rodriguez.
Great talk. PhD student on last year with a 1-year-old kid. You heard her? Yeah. So again, on the same page as Diana was talking about, I think the problem is that even though we can redefine goals for ourselves on our career, it may cost us going up the ladder, because the whole world is not going to redefine what they expect from us as work.
I actually disagree with you. I think it will. The whole world is going through pandemic. It's not only you or me are going through pandemic. The whole world is now in the global pandemic.
Well, I hope you're right. But again, I wanted to comment on that. But also, in my case, should I lay back a bit on the coffee input? Because stimulants, it's a daily routine on our PhD life. But yeah, should we really force ourselves to calm down and meditate a little bit? Thank you again.
I wish I have an easy answer. I think the proper therapist would be able to give you an answer knowing your situation. So it's always personal all the time, and you should, of course, feel whether you still have some limits to go further or not. But I would always recommend, when you're in such situation, to go to the therapy. I myself know that I pushed myself through PhD, and I've then had 2.5 years of post-PhD depression, which I'm barely at the moment getting out of. Was it worth it? I absolutely don't think so. I should have defended half a year later. This is for me. For other people, maybe they have different opinions. So I think going to the doctor and actually figuring out these things with the doctor and with your supervisor, yeah, I think this is better.
Thank you.
Again, I wish I had simple answers, but I don't.
There is a question in the chat from Telma, so I would like Telma to talk, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Olga, for taking the time to talk with us about this topic. So I would like to ask you, a bit in line with what Raquel Esfalian was saying. Do you think people are not able to recognize the signs, for example, for depression, or they are ashamed to share this information with their friends or people at work, family?
Yes. If that's a question, yes, I think so. Wait a second, I'll find you a link on our YouTube video where we discuss with Dragonfly signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety. It's called Mental Health Literacy Talk. It was one of the first talks we created, actually. Here it is. So, oh, sorry, I'll send it to everyone. I accidentally sent it to just one person. Here it is. So here you can just watch a video and see what are the signs and symptoms for depression, anxiety, and a couple of other very common things for academic setting. And then, yes, of course, some of your friends or family may not notice this, because if they see and talk to you every day, and this happens gradually, they also may not see this drastic change. So, of course, for all of us, as mental health diseases come from the egocentric point of view. So when we are in depression, we feel that my particular issues are so existential. No one will be able to understand me. No one will be able to help me. There is no exit out of this situation. And especially when you get all these deadlines, contract ending in the academic settings, and when your peers are publishing in Nature and you don't, it's always very difficult. But you should still keep an eye on yourself, try to find some symptoms and signs, and try to be open at least with some peers of yours about this. So I would strongly recommend you to watch this video and maybe see whether you see something in yourself or in your colleagues or friends. And there are also some tips and suggestions on what to do.
Yeah, actually, it was what I was going to ask you next. It was how you can pick up these signals from your colleagues, and in case you know that you have a colleague or a friend that has some mental issue, how you should behave in order to support that person.
Again, there are no simple answer. There are multiple things which can be done. In my institute, for example, and now we're trying to promote it for the whole Max Planck Gesellschaft, as we have mental health first aiders. They're trained volunteers, local PhD students and postdocs who are trained to recognize the symptoms and signs. And you can just go to them and tell them, I think something is with my colleague, or I think something is with me. Can you please try to check out and maybe sort of redirect them somewhere. Again, there's the whole seminar on how to talk to your colleagues and friends. If you think that they have some issues, there's a whole different topic, which we can maybe talk one day during next PhD retreat. In general, I would suggest just to be open. It's not that you can bring harm by expressing your concern. And actually, usually people, especially when they're depressed, they feel so alone. They feel like no one really cares at all about what's going to happen to them. So in most of the cases, your approach, if it's done nicely and like not super invasive, will be sort of treated in a positive way. But of course, you're not responsible for anyone except for yourself. So you can try, but you know, we all should first put mask on ourselves and then on the person next to us. Joao has a question.
Yes.
Hi, Olga. Thank you so much for your work and for this presentation. I'm not a PhD student anymore. I wish. No, I'm joking.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the whole setting of academia. So, do you have time? So the question is, we are all working in a field of society where metrics and self-worth is measured in numbers, which I think creates a lot of pressure. So do you think there could be a kind of a global initiative started by Dragonfly to change the perception of people's worth in academia by numbers, by citations, numbers of papers? So I just feel that these metrics that, well, are more or less applying to all of society, right? Competition, and it's how we are brought up. But this is particularly difficult in science, I guess. What are your feelings on this?
In principle, we Dragonfly, we organized to create a systemic change. It was our first and primary goal to say, okay, we were also tired of establishing these initiatives so mental health first aiders in the Institute, mental health initiative in the Institute. We're so tired of the fact that these initiatives are needed. And they're needed and they're created from the grassroots approach, so bottom-up approach. And people don't really care about this top-bottom approach. A lot of the issues with the self-worth and things we discussed also during our imposter syndrome talk. And I really think that academia is an overachiever place, and a lot of people who are overachievers come to academia. Yes, there is absolutely a need to support our people and to talk about how system is not really optimal, I'd put it this way, in case of the evaluation. Again, unfortunately, I myself cannot come up with a new evaluation system of person being as a great scientist. So how can we say someone is a great scientist or not? What I can do from my side is to make sure that from the mental health point of view, things are taken care of. I cannot change the way that, you know, when you're applying as a postdoc, for the second postdoc, you're asked, what are your publications? Yeah, I cannot change the fact that one person can be less lucky and one person can be more lucky in their projects. And it's not only about the amount of hours you put. If it would have been that simple, we wouldn't be all here doing science if it's only about the efforts. What we can do is to create the environment for people to get better support. What we can do also is to sort of grow up and be better supervisors ourselves. This is what we can do. Definitely starting from ourselves, definitely promoting this kindness and tolerance and acceptance and understanding. This is what we can do, and that's what we're trying to do. Of course, in the Dragonfly, we created some sort of like a system to measure what Institute does in order to evaluate sort of like whether they're taking care of the mental health in a better way or not, or in a worse way. So there's a certain questionnaire, and the faculty can answer these questions, whether they have peer support, fighting stigma, I don't know, like all these kind of things. Yeah, I guess it's not up to us to change the whole crooked system of academia overnight.
Absolutely not. My point was, I'm sure you can give the adequate scientific support to how important it would be to change this, right?
Exactly.
Because this system cannot really work, and the product of it's this one, right? Where even bad science gets done just because of pressure, right?
Yes, at the end we just get, I don't know, 50% of PhD students with depression and anxiety, and the dropout rates, especially nowadays with the burnouts and everything. What only we can do is ourselves to create the supportive environment. I'm an optimistic person. I believe things will change. Maybe not while I'm alive, but they should change. You know? So this
you
is
do your part. Yeah.
Olga, I don't know.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
Sure.
We would like to make perhaps a final comment. We are reaching our time here, but so you mentioned in your talk something very important, that if we take care of our mental health first, productivity will improve. And this is as true as a temple. So people also have to realize, and that is my personal note on it, that you don't need to go to therapy just because you're depressed. Sometimes you just need a space to talk, to discuss all your frustrations, to deal with stress, with anxiety, and manage aspects of your life much better in order to avoid getting depressed. So there are many, many tools for people. I sent a couple of links of Portuguese sites that are currently available. They're mostly for COVID advice. But of course, I mean, please talk to others and please take care of yourself. Okay, I don't know if we have any further questions, but I think we have to close the session. Unfortunately, I would really love that we had a little bit more time. Olga, I have to thank you so much for your presentation, for all of your advices. And people, please talk if you need. At least my phone is always available, okay? Bye-bye.
I was just going to add, thank you so much and for this wonderful opportunity for me to talk about this. And if someone has questions, please drop me an email. You can ask for my email from organizer. You can drop us an email to Dragonfly, addressing it to me, and they will forward it to me. So if there are some questions or you don't feel like asking them now, or tomorrow morning you wake up and you're like, oh, I forgot to ask something, just drop me an email. I'll read my emails and I'll answer.